Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the community CLI meeting for Instruct-Lab. All the meetings are governed by this code of conduct you can find. Meetings are recorded. They will be posted to the YouTube channel. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to, but if you do, feel free to do it or join off camera. Yeah, feel free to raise your hands, ask any questions. You know the drill. Moving on to the agenda items. So we have an announcement. We got 0.19.1 yesterday with a few cool fixes from the community as well. So thanks everyone for your contributions there. I think we will keep it open in case we see any more bugs and testing and stuff. We're always prepared to cut a 19.2 or whatever is needed. So just keep an eye out for that. Next topic is, I think, did somebody add this and wants to own it about reviewing good first issues? Or is it just like a staple that we just have in the template?
Yeah, we've just been kind of doing this recently, trying to highlight stuff that might be easier for newer contributors to join in and help out with. Looking at the folks we have in attendance today, I think it's mostly maintainers and people that have a good history of contribution. So I don't know if there's anything here we explicitly want to talk about given that. But also if someone sees something that's jumping off the page for them, we can definitely talk about it. If not, I was thinking maybe since we have a light agenda today, we could discuss some of the epics and some of the design documents that are floating around with the CLI. Give folks a chance to maybe express stuff that they've written, maybe question stuff that other people have written. But this is just an idea. We also felt to do this if folks would rather not. But go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to say that if nobody has any major design topics, like if we do, we can go over those. But if not, people can also ask questions about 19 because we did change some stuff with some of the commands. And if there's any like that people have noticed, this would be probably a good time to go over it because a lot of us are the ones that made it. So it's hard for us to catch a lot of these things as we run through the workflow because like we know how to get around all the weird bugs. But if you hit some weird bugs, this would be a good place to voice those.
Yeah, the one thing I think BJ had highlighted was that we probably are not yet at a good, like the ideal place in terms of end-to-end testing on Mac because we weren't able to catch that Mac OS bug that was fixed in 19.1 with the change in paths to XDG directory. So it's probably something that I don't know if we have. Maybe we already have an open issue for that, but
we do.
Okay.
We do indeed.
Cool.
Yeah, this is a good discussion item. I'll link it on here, the agenda. Go ahead, JJ, while I find that.
I mean, I guess the follow-up question after that is, do we actually have like Mac hardware that we're running this on, or is it just like we're praying that the machine on like Google GitHub Actions can catch these things? Do we have dedicated?
So we have like a Mac OS image in GitHub that runs like the unit functional tests right now. Mm-hmm. And those are all tests that don't require a GPU. The end-to-end script that kind of tests the workflow, we're only testing on CentOS Stream right now. But BJ had highlighted that, here's the issue, actually, I've just found it. I'll put it in the chat and also the agenda here. BJ highlighted that there are like AWS, I think there are AWS instances that we could use that have Mac. So what we could do is basically just have parallel runners to the current Linux ones that we have on PRs that will trigger like the same tests, basically the same workflow script, but on Mac virtual machines instead of CentOS virtual machines.
Awesome. Yeah, because just to reiterate, and it's because it's recorded, got to say it out loud. The IBM ecosystem is significantly Mac. So
yes.
These will kneecap a significant amount of the adoption on the IBM side if we don't have equal testing.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and this issue, I'm going to go ahead and mark it as ready. I'm going to raise the priority of it, and I'm going to see if we can target this for at the latest 0.21.
Something I just wanted to highlight. There's so the simple train, the approach that we kind of took with 19, or at least that I took, is that I kind of focused on putting the training into buckets, and instead focusing on getting the new full train working on Mac. So that one should be really good if you use the MPS device in terms of like, it works. We're working on like model fidelity issues with all of them, honestly, like producing models that actually learn, because they're really good with skills. But as everyone probably knows, knowledge is like hit or miss sometimes on the laptop. So that is something that we're prioritizing. I will just say that the majority of the effort is going into that new full rather than simple. There is work that is being scoped by Alina to look at the MLX examples library, which is our simple Mac pipeline, and like take the new code that Apple has released for MLX and integrate it into the MLX. So a lot of the errors that we're getting are just because like we know that we have to basically rewrite part of that. So that's honestly, before we even get the runners up and running, I think like fixing the simple pipeline, and then making a runner for the new changes, maybe in one fell swoop, is probably like the approach we're going to go with. Just because like we know that code is super out of date, so it was written like in March, I think. So if you're looking for Mac support, I would try out the full pipeline if you have 32 or more gigabytes of unified memory. I just thought I would throw that out there.
Yeah.
I'm looking now. I put this in the agenda here. I think we actually might have 2 duplicate issues for this. We have, if you don't mind opening these up, JD, actually. We have provision of Mac OS box running unit and E2E tests, and we also have create E2E workflow for Mac.
Which one is older? This one's older.
That one is older.
I just saw that because I was looking for my comments and the bug that you're talking about. I didn't see him.
Yeah.
Like, I know I made comments about this somewhere.
I was doing the exact same thing, BJ. I'm like, I know he commented on this yesterday. Okay, we should probably close one of these. It probably doesn't matter which one. I did just do all the prioritization stuff on 1638, and I kind of feel like that's maybe a more inclusive issue because actually the other one's a little misleading because we actually do run unit tests on Mac. We run unit functional on Mac right now. So I'm tempted to close 112. We can move over some of the comments, I think, and then keep 1638 open.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. By doing this, we'll kind of be referencing them and each other. So like, if someone's looking at 1638, they can probably find this one and see the comments if they care about it.
Yeah. Can you close as unplanned, JD, for that one? Oh, never mind.
Done.
Okay, that's closed as complete, not closed as.
Oh, wait,
that's fine.
Oops.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Here, pop up the other one. Oh no, you don't have to. Okay.
Sorry, I'll let you take care of it.
Just go. Okay, so since you already reopened it, which you didn't have to do, go to the arrow next to closed issue.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay.
That one, second
one. Yeah.
And then just click it.
We got there.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Cool.
Back to this.
So this one is prioritized. It's not assigned, but I think yeah, we definitely do need to prioritize this one. I'm doing some work actually on the side of the E2E and well, I don't want to go on a tangent about this. I have a diagram that I'm putting together that explains sort of the entire CI ecosystem. I think some of you have seen this already. But I want to get a PR up for that and the implementation of that in. And then I can maybe start looking at this after the fact. Yeah, I guess we do at the time. Yeah. I will.
I mean, just
Oh.
yeah. In general, I mean, there's a lot of work. I think we talked about in a couple of meetings that we're going to revamp our CI and make sure that tests actually run on every PR. Just because like currently a lot of the workflow is not exercised on every PR change, which has led to regressions and just like functional changes, which is like as we mature as a project, we want to make sure that we get rid of those regressions because that makes progress hard when we break things.
I mean, I don't think we've had a ton of regressions, have we? I'm not really familiar with.
In the realm of training, we have with like the laptop use case. Like there's been a couple of cases where I think we've inadvertently broken the laptop or like made it so that like it fails more if you don't have the right flag specified and stuff like that because we changed the config, stuff like
There
that.
has been some temporary stuff around that.
Yeah, so
I mean,
we fixed.
In main we have, but I don't think in releases we've had regressions like in actual release versions.
Yeah, I mean,
I could,
Certainly
I
on the
could be
Mac
wrong.
side, on the Mac side we have, right? Because we had problems in 18, we're having problems in 19. When it first comes out, people fall over on the Mac, which hopefully adding an end-to-end testing story will help us catch those. But I do think we do have a slight issue on the Mac side at the moment.
Yeah, I'm just like, are these? I mean, we definitely have had like issues with functionality. I'm just like, I'm not sure if these are things that were working before that stopped working. Like was Mac better on like 15 than it is
so like
currently?
it used to be a more fluid experience to train and convert. Than it is now. Like if you don't
I see.
know the incantation to train and convert your model, it's kind of hard. Which
So
is
the functionality's still there. It's just that the actual orchestration of that functionality is kind of probably regressed in the user experience.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of saying it. It's also possible that the MLX code has drastically changed in the last 8 months, which would necessitate a change, which is what Alina is looking
Like on the Apple side?
So like the way MLX, we don't have to go into this too much, but we can't.
I mean,
the way
we got time. You know?
At least this is the way that I interpret MLX, is that it's kind of like Llama, where we brought in the code rather than importing it as a library, which means that as changes happen, we don't pick them up or adapt to them. So as time goes on, we're going to have to kind of go back to the MLX examples repository and look at the new versions of how they're doing everything and bring in the new changes, as well as with the conversion script, which is also happens to be a Llama library that we don't import, but we bring in directly. So both of those parts of the Mac workflow, we haven't been keeping up with as changes have come out. And it's possible that not many changes have come out either. So it's more of a research spike we would have to do to figure out if changes have happened.
Gotcha.
That
makes sense.
Wasn't the more long-term plan to get rid of the MLX code and just use PyTorch to do the training all the time?
Yeah, so the new training pipeline that was introduced in 19, pipeline full, that is that. So if you use that pipeline and you specify device equals MPS, which is the PyTorch macOS device, that's probably the long-term plan for what we're envisioning with the Mac. The only problem is it's a larger memory footprint, so you need at least 32 gigs to get it to work. So keeping MLX around is good for, hey, you just want to run training in like 30 minutes on a 16 gigabyte M1 that we still technically support. You can do that with MLX. So I think keeping that around as a sort of simple training loop is definitely worth it, but emphasizing the simple versus full versus the accelerated GPU library is something that we're trying to convey as we go across releases.
Yeah, there's no quantized support, quantized training support for MPS yet. So that's really the only reason to keep MLX around. Marty?
Yeah, I kind of want to come in that one. I think we're muddying the water with MLX here. Why I'm saying that is, I think we need to distinguish between the implementations that do the operations like training, tuning, data generation and evaluation, etc., and the actual workflow. So essentially, there should be one flow of code that is tuned for the different OSs. And the aspects that have broken are more around aspects of stuff that sometimes maybe some OS specific stuff has come in and has had a knock-on effect down the line. So I suppose when we look at this going forward, we should look at, you know, the plug and play of the different tunings and so forth, whether you're on a Mac, whether you're on a system that has a huge amount of hardware on it. And that idea that maybe even going forward, your tuning might be connected to a service that's running somewhere else. But getting tied up in the weeds around the Mac and Linux being better, that's not the difference. The difference is the hardware. Because if you have a Linux box that, you know, only has CPU on it, it's going to have the exact same effect as a Mac with metal on it. You know, so it's not a like for like. It's more. I think we need to extract up from the hardware from as the profiles, not the OS, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, and that's why like the PyTorch approach is probably the better move, is because it allows the code to be exactly the same, and like we can treat like the footprints as laptop versus more like a GPU accelerated box, which is something that I know we've been trying to move towards. It's a sticky situation though, because of where we were very like, oh, Mac OS versus Linux versus accelerated box. So we're kind of just trying to like migrate towards a more ubiquitous workflow to no matter where you are. Which a lot of
and being able to configure that workflow then, like there's nothing wrong with MLX, it can stay there, it's an implementation. Now it's probably all right that the code got copied in was an abomination, but you know, those things happen. You know what I mean? We always have to work around things, you know, nothing is ideal. But the ability to say that, you know, if I want to use MLX for my tuning, which maybe you do or you don't, I can. But if I want to then connect out to, I don't know, FTSP or whatever that's running somewhere on a system, then I can do that as well. So I think it's just extracting the workflow from the underlying implementations that will do the different steps.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, where we are now is fragmented implementations, and a lot of that is because of like the way that the implementations had to happen in a certain order almost. And I know that it's roadmapped that like everything should be added to the training library, which by doing that, I think will resolve a lot of these issues where like it's just by the nature of the code being in completely separate places that we kind of think of it as different boxes right now, like different like pools of training. But when they're all unified in some sort of implementation that's in the same place, it's just like figures out what hardware you have and runs the same stuff. That's where we want to get to, but that's kind of a long-term planning that we're trying to stopgap like solutions along the way that aren't like so that full training loop. The reason I wrote it the way I did is because it was trying to mimic the exact functionality of the training library, so that when we deem it's the right time to move everything to the library, so it's a unified implementation, it should just be like a lift and shift. And then once it's there, we can get to the workflow you're talking about where like hardware is hardware. It should be like the training techniques that just work. I think that aligns with what you're saying.
Yeah, because I suppose we know we've hit nirvana when the back end, if the hardware is there for the back end, that the back end will be literally, it just pulls down the CLI and configures whatever tuning it wants or whatever, and then it runs into it. That probably is, you know, then you've reached where you wanted to get to.
Yeah, I think the other piece to that is like, I guess what you're kind of touching on is just generally having good abstraction for what training loop we plug in, basically, right? Because in that vein, I don't have an issue for it yet, but I've been scoping out some work for how to refactor the code for the training to make it more that you have like a unified interface that you can kind of plug in the back end training that you want to kind of make it more aligned with across even just OSs, like to have the same workflow like Charlie said across Mac and Linux. You don't want those discrepancies. So that's something I have in mind that I want to make an issue for. And the other issue that I have in the same vein is the redesign and convert thing that I've linked here, to basically make sure that like conversion is like a common step for everyone, not just Mac, and that workflow basically flows in the same for Linux and Mac. So like having these kinds of abstractions in place, I think will get us closer to what you're describing in some sense.
Yeah, JD, I think that sounds good, the abstraction stuff, but let's just make sure to get that in like a dev doc. Just because I know that there's like 4 different people who are probably thinking of like how to move training forward currently. And I think like having some sort of class abstraction is the way forward. But I know that the folks who work in the libraries are very focused on getting all the functionality into there like tomorrow or as soon as they can. Just so we move like functionality out of the CLI and into the various libraries. So getting everyone on the same page with that is going to be kind of a crucial part of that process, probably.
Yeah, I think, personally, I feel like it would be easier to implement the abstraction first in the CLI, because currently what it is the library is just an extension of what starts in the CLI. So if we go to the source and put that abstraction in place, we can move the whole thing over more easily than like move all the code in its current state into the library and then figure out, because the abstraction should really happen in the CLI, because the library is just a pluggable backend for the CLI training. So
yeah,
I can probably start a dev doc for it. Cool. That was a good discussion. Thanks all. So I think we still have time. So do we still want to go with the new design proposals and stuff? I think that'd be pretty useful to have, because I for one have been creating a lot of issues lately for things that I think should happen. So let me pull that up. So do we want to just look at epics or just like new issues in general?
Maybe epics.
Maybe epics, yeah.
By the label there.
Oh,
Just use the label. A lot of epics.
yeah, epics for days.
GitHub is actually Russell Bryant shared this with Red Hat, but GitHub is actually doing this thing where they're doing like proper sub issues and stuff. They're gunning for Atlassian and Microsoft is. So there's actually some pretty cool stuff on the roadmap for that.
This is mine. This epic. I can kind of describe what we've been thinking here. So as we're scoping out work for a REST API, the reason that has kind of been a slow process is because we've realized that before implementing a REST API, we probably need certain functionality to land. This is one piece of that, which is process management. So like you can't really have a REST API if you don't have the concept of like UUIDs for different tasks in Instruct-Lab. So this epic is kind of to scope out like implementing the concept of like multi-processing and like tracking processes. So like when you run iLab data generate, for example, it'll start itself in its own thread that we can probably detach from and attach back to. And then I split out like detaching, listing, and reattaching as separate tasks, because doing that all at once is a very probably bad idea. I think probably step 1 should be implementing like internally the concept of keeping track of these processes, but to the user, nothing would probably change in like version 0.0001. We would then probably add the ability to list the processes before detaching and attaching, and then detaching and attaching would probably happen last. Or I don't know, those last 2 can happen in any order, but definitely the concept of internally tracking processes and then exposing it to the user is kind of the order of operations I was thinking here. Yeah, so this is one of the things that has to happen before the REST API. Another one is like a better concept of data model and taxonomy management. So all of that fun stuff. This is something that I'm going to be working on for the 0.20 release. Probably I've already started like code sketching a little bit, what it would look like, just like how Python manages this sort of thing. And yeah, feel free to ask questions or concerns about this. It's generally kind of a move towards more of like that model engine sort of thing where we can manage processes and models and all sorts of stuff and kick off stuff in the background rather than having your terminal open and running a training or generation. And it depends on having your terminal open. So yeah, will be cool.
Yeah. Do we have sub issues for this? Because I'm also wondering if I don't know if we need a dev doc for the design of how we're going to be tracking these processes. Like, do we need to maintain a process table of some kind within iLab, that kind of stuff?
I'm probably not at the dev doc stage yet. I think I will probably eventually. I think if I were to throw up a dev doc now, it would be like this issue because I don't have any of like the background context of like, actually what the implementation is going to look like. So it's one of those weird ones where I feel like I have to code before I can think about what actually has to happen because I'm not super familiar with how Python manages this sort of thing. But yeah, I'll throw up a dev doc, but the issues will be roughly those 4 tasks, but I'll probably, flesh them out more and make them more specific because I think doing it all at once is a bad idea, but having an internal concept of processes and then exposing it is the general workflow I was thinking of.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Makes sense.
I'll get to the dev doc stage, but not as of yet. I actually started code sketching yesterday, and it's not super complicated, but there's a way to do it completely wrong and a way to do it kind of right. So I did the wrong way first, and then I'm basically like as high up in the code as we can. Everything should kick off a separate process. Like I was initially thinking of like, oh, at different parts in the code, like when you actually shell out to like the libraries, it should start the process. But that's going to be very hacky and not uniform to start. But that also is interesting because if we're thinking of the API being more like we're going to have to redesign the CLI to be like a client server model, then it might have to be lower down. So I'm still messing around with where the actual processes should be cut off from the main process. So I'll figure that out.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm happy to collaborate with this. I think this is going to be, this could end up being tricky, like you said. But yeah, thanks for starting the work on that. Pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, this is a big piece that we need to focus on going forwards. The other stuff, well, I have is this. So that's one thing for the like to make us more API facing. The other one that I think we need is probably this one. It's probably a close second. It's about mainly just introducing like logical splits inside the code base to sort of create like a, roughly speaking, client server side of it, so that we can kind of emulate how we can change how like the CLI can actually consume and behave similar to like the clients of the API. I found an old issue from Christian that actually aligned quite well with the overall epic, so I pulled it in, which is just about separating the UI side into like its own package so that all of the click command endpoints are in one package and they're isolated from the actual implementations that they sort of tap into. So this just kind of extends the client server idea and like solidifies it by like isolating all of the click endpoints into its own like CLI package. And then we can have like swappable backends essentially for the implementation. So you swap from either the inline embedded implementations for all these functions, or or if you have like a dash remote, then like we'd have something that's smart enough to shell out to like the same like to a different implementation of the same backend, but like having the same contract, which is essentially what the API is. So this kind of plays into like the idea of introducing like an interface layer that knows to pick the correct backend based on whether it's in the CLI or like a remote endpoint. But so that's kind of the general overview of this whole epic of just splitting up the code internally and making it's also more testable that way because you can test the UI endpoint separately and then the implementation separately. So that's another big one, I think, in terms of making us more API facing. This one is just an epic that talks about conversion related issues. Right now, I have the one that I spoke about earlier about changing how convert works and making it more universal for everybody. And then there's another one that talks about an issue with, it's like a Llama CVB conversion issue that Llama CVB conversion doesn't support quantized safe tensor models as starting points. But there's just a general epic to track any other convert related issues. Yeah, JJ.
I just want to throw in again on a recorded line here that the weird that the iLab model convert or yeah convert is a great idea. Right now in the ecosystem, there is very few easy ways to do this. To change from a PyTorch underscore model.bin or safe tensor or whatever. And if we actually put this out there as a easy button to do this, that would actually help with adoption, because people are like, oh, look, this is just some way to do it. And it would actually bring people in really easily, because when you ask them to do a convert.py that and then be like, what is this? That is very confusing. So I am 1,000% on this one.
Awesome. Thanks, JJ. Charlie?
Yeah, I plus 100 on that, and it's also super simple because I did it in the full train. I just threw it in at the end. I converted a dot bin to GGUF, and then even like quantized it to a Q4 as well. So like the way that it's written now is just super kind of hard coded to the MLX path. But if we made it more of a general tool to convert anything anywhere, I don't think that would be too big of a lift, honestly. And it would really benefit everyone, because sometimes I have a safe tensor model and I'm on a laptop and I'm like, I want to convert this, but I don't know how. So it'd be really great.
Yeah. The only kind of compatibility issue I can see with this is that it kind of would break the current Mac flow, where it's like you do train, then you do iLab model test, where you kind of smoke test the whole thing. And then if you like it, if you like the adapter that you smoke tested, then like convert fuses it and then converts it. I'm not saying, I don't know if that's really a workflow that anyone wants or cares if we like change it to make it so that we kind of auto pick an adapter file, because essentially we are ripping out this fusing logic from the convert step right now. And like if we wanted to retain it, we'd have to maybe introduce like a new iLab model fuse or something. But the way I say it, I don't really think that anyone really wants that or like cares if about like picking an adapter that they want to test and then merge, because I think that's just an implementation detail nobody cares about. So I think even though there's a breaking change, I think it's probably one of the few good breaking changes where it's simpler and more aligned with Linux. So yeah, I think, yeah, like Charlie said, there's not a big lift, but I think it does require a bit of thought in how we want to design it. Like what kind of back and forth conversions do we want to support? How should it look? Like for example, right now I have in mind, like we have a pretty safe tensor to GGUF conversion. We also have technically a way to convert GGUFs to safe tensors, although like a big caveat is I think it's like a lossy conversion. But we can expose that path easily as we go forwards. But right now, yeah, we can kind of mess around with these 4 formats, and then hopefully we design it in a way that it's pluggable and extensible to other formats. And then depending on like we'd also have to write it in a way that once you have like 3 or 4 formats and you want to convert between them, that's like the number of paths of like conversion like exponentially increase every time you add a new format. So we might need to be a little careful about how like we actually do the conversion rather and don't load up the code too much. So that's just some things that I think we should think about a little bit more. But yeah, I'm glad everyone's on board with this epic. Sorry, JJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to throw in a couple of more cents here. I'm not 100% sure all the different formats to your point, but I know that our downstream products are going to be releasing in specific formats themselves. So I say as long as the upstream project can convert whatever our downstream products have decided to do, I think that is a great first implementation, and we shouldn't worry about anything else until somebody comes along and says, I really want, blah conversion. And then we can talk about, well, where is it and why do you need it kind of thing. I know on the IBM side, they chose a very specific path for whatever reason, which is completely different than what the Red Hat side has decided to do. So I just say as long as our downstream products, our main two ones, are doing it, I think it's a reasonable place to be.
Yeah, fair enough. Makes total sense. One other idea I just had as a distant stretch goal for the future is like thinking more about like the general issue of having something like this available in the field. Right now, this will be like a good universal endpoint to convert models between file formats, but I can see a use case for this expanding into allowing conversions between model architectures as well. I think that'll be more interesting to the research-oriented people in the future because there's like a lot of different architectures out there, and people are probably converting back and forth all the time between them. So like I think the file formats is a good entry point. It's like low-hanging fruit essentially, but we might in the long term have our sights on like trying to see if we can support architecture conversions. That'd be really, I think, a good value add to this functionality. Okay. What else? So we have, I have this other issue that's just tracking all of the places where you want to deprecate certain flags because they're causing a lot of issues. Just a bit of a housekeeping sort of epic. A lot of these will be handled by just one like PR that we're kind of working on because a lot of them are around like model related flags and the confusion coming from there. But there are a few other flags as well that I've kind of noticed as a part of this. So like some data ingestion flags that are confusing. There's also like within training, we have num epochs for like Linux based training. And then there's like dash iters for like Mac OS. These are all relics from like earlier implementations. But like other than this, I think there might be a few more flags, but like we can use this epic as a catch-all to track that these flags need to be deprecated. So that's the idea behind that epic. Community training redesign. Charlie, we wanna talk about this more? Think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the big part of it was adding the different pipelines, but as you can see, this kind of touches on what you were saying. There's a lot of issues with training that have been filed over the months, I guess. And this is kind of just a catch-all to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable for them. So we've started chipping away at them. And over time, we're gonna fix some, and we're gonna aim for stability in coming releases. Now that we've kind of made training a little bit more standard, most of the changes that you should notice are going to be kind of internal, as JD's talked about, with like a re-architecture of the code, not the functionality. So yeah, this is just a way for us to make sure that we do these issues.
Cool. Thanks, Charlie. What is it? Gaudi support. I think this one is generally maybe a little bit more product facing, but I think generally adding I think this kind of started off a little bit with adding support for the HPU device type within Linux training. But I think that specific aspect is probably covered by Charlie's new full training loop, which kind of abstracts away to like the device level. So I think we already have HPU added in there, don't we?
No.
Okay.
I just added CPU and MPS. I mean,
Okay.
it can be extended for CUDA HPU and ROCm, but I just didn't think that made sense in the first moment.
Makes sense. But like at least thanks to that training loop, we have a good path to extend that support there. So it's a little bit more just future facing to allow, I guess, community users that have Intel hardware, have like consumer grade Intel HPUs and stuff that can take advantage of the code. So it's really a win for everyone, and that involves like not just allowing training to run on the device, but then like if we need to craft some kind of profile, we also probably, I'm thinking about if the profiles are sticking around, whether at some point we need some schema validation so people can write their own profiles, and then like we have some way to validate what they're writing. If they have some, if we create a way for people to, if they have some more unique architecture that they need to have supported, maybe they can contribute profiles in some sense. I don't know what that might look like though. Sorry, JJ, go ahead.
I just want to throw out, isn't the whole point of the profiles the paid product? Right? Like we would say that this is a good profile for this specific hardware or whatever in this thing. So if we give the opportunity for people to write their own with a schema, wouldn't that be bad? Or am I missing something?
I think we do like some of the profiling stuff downstream for
Mhm.
like sort of enterprise level GPUs, but I think the actual like sort of like the concept of a profile and being able to do like additional profiles that we might support upstream but aren't explicitly supported as part of like a downstream product, I think that is fine. I don't think we've had anyone tell us we can't do that. Someone definitely speak up if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But,
No.
but as far as I know, it's sort of a matter of like profiles are allowed everywhere. It's just that for downstream stuff, like a profile is being supported downstream, but not. Ali, are you wanting to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think the idea is that if somebody really wants to make Instruct-Lab work really well on some set of hardware, that they could contribute the profile to that. For example, say a Steam Deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I just wanted to bring that up just to make sure that it was clear. That's all.
I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in like figuring out what the process is for profile creation, and like I attempted to do one for 4x810, and it's time consuming. Let's just say it's a lot of trial and error.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. And then the other thing on this is, I think the training library just switched to using Accelerate within the library to sort of delegate between which backends actually get used. And I think there's some work needed to support that on Gaudi and other sort of hardware. But that's kind of the state of where this epic is. And the whole idea is to kind of just understand the big sort of moving pieces and what direction we're trying to move towards in the project. So it's kind of helpful to look at the epic level. And I think this is the one Nathan spoke about earlier. Improvements.
Yeah, right now my what I'm working on actively is modifying the A10G job to run on PRs. So I'm working on that as we speak, actually. And Ali and I are both sort of working. I think Ali's kind of Ali and I are working on. We got the large scale job running with like the new configuration, but we're hitting an issue with like the Hugging Face downloading, and where like it's able to start the downloading, but I think it's downloading so much that it just if we have any kind of network interrupt, it's failing out. So we need to find a way to like wrap that with some retry logic or something. So we're going to be looking into that too. So it should be succeeding at this point, but it's still failing because of that download problem. So I don't know. We're going to try to see if we can maybe improve the download logic. If we can't do that, then I think we might need to explore some way to maybe like either pull the models from somewhere else or cache them somehow so that they don't need to be downloaded. Although I prefer that we're doing the downloading since that is what we're supposed to be testing. But anyway, that's kind of where the CI stuff is at this exact moment.
Cool.
If anyone's interested in any of those open issues, the only one I think that I'm actively working on is 2228. So if folks are interested in stuff, please let me know. And I know BJ also has a what you call it, a PR upstream, not for Instruct-Lab, but for the wait for status check action that we're using. And that's sort of work that's ongoing with CI, but isn't being tracked here. But I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, BJ. But
yeah, I just brief a couple of things. One is that when we moved to use workflow run flow, that unfortunately detached the end-to-end job from the PR status. So we reverted back to pull request target, but that also reset the default where the end-to-end run kicks off on unapproved PRs. So I don't think there's any way to solve that. It's just a fact of life. There is a bug in the action that we're using. In fact, I want to add a feature to that action too, because right now you can give it a list of jobs, and if the jobs are running, it will wait for them. But if they haven't started, then it just proceeds. So it can be an awkward situation. So what I'd like to add to that action is a required set of jobs, not just an optional set of jobs. So like some things are optional, like markdown length's only important if it ran. But for example, end-to-end test shouldn't start until a unit test ran, because there's no way, that.
Right.
So, so that's another feature I want to add to it. I'm not sure how responsive that project is, so we may have to fork and fix it ourselves until they get their act together.
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate all that work. I was really looking at it like really in depth when I was drawing that diagram I mentioned. Yeah, I think we have the opportunity for like a really cool flow here. Just like gotta get the bits and pieces of it done. But yeah, I'll post this diagram in the info channel on Upstream Slack as well. It will be in a PR, but I'll give folks a sneak preview, and we can discuss it more there if people are interested.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, BJ and Ali as well. Ooh, epic for fixing logging. Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of logging issues floating around. Is this something we want to talk about a bit more?
Sebastian's been taking point on this. I think if there's any other logging issues, we should put them under the epic just for tracking purposes. But a good chunk of these have gotten done. So we should be in a better place logging wise.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I don't think we need to dive into this too much right now.
Yeah, we don't have to go over all of the epics. I don't think. Yeah. I mean, if people have an interest in a specific one, I think we can continue. But
yeah, we can. Honestly, I was gonna next maybe look at some of the new issues and things that I have. Well, I created some of them, but I think there's probably more. I don't know. Do we want to just see some of these issues? We only have like 10 minutes left, but I figured it can't hurt.
5 minutes. We stopped at 55.
Oh, 55. Sorry, 5 minutes. Yeah, one I can really quickly talk is just dovetailing off of what we spoke about earlier with the convert. I actually have already made an issue to deprecate model test altogether so that we can align quickly with Linux. And I think this was already on the cards. So I just pointing out that there is an issue here now to track this work. What else? The other thing was I also created an epic for tracking the config conversions, I think it was. Let me find that real quick. Yeah, this one. I've kind of probably mentioned this to folks before, but just highlighting that I created an issue for this recently, I think, about putting in place a way to manage multiple config versions, because I think we have a lot of ideas for how to improve the config. There's some ideas to flatten out the structure and all these sorts of things, deprecating old fields, but a lot of that we can't really do very well without breaking everybody all the time. So I think it would be a good practice for us to put a mechanism in place that can handle translation between config versions so that we are freed up to make breaking changes and keep that sustained. Because it'll be like a front loading the work really to manage multiple config versions going forward. So that we place some kind of mechanism here that can take older config versions and translate them automatically to new versions. While this might not be super required before we are 1.0, once we go to 1.0, like eventually this will probably be good to have and be convenient for users so that they don't have to keep updating their config. We can kind of take care of that for them. And right now, I think we don't have a config 2.0 yet or like immediate plans to do it, but I think we'll probably get there sooner or later. So this is probably a good thing that I was thinking would be nice to have within the CLI. So I just made an epic to track it so people are aware. And then, yeah, I think those are just a couple of other things. In case anybody wants to bring anything else up, we can discuss it, or we can kind of just stop there. Feels like a good stopping point. Okay, I'll take that as. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carol.
So this is not related to the current topic, since I think we're done with that. I just wanted to have a quick note that I'll be traveling pretty much throughout the next 4 weeks. So for the community meeting on Tuesdays, Dominic has graciously volunteered to host them. But for those of you who also attend that regularly, JJ, Nathan, Charlie, please give him the support as needed. So appreciate that, and I will, try to catch up with the recordings whenever possible. But yeah, thanks for this, and see you in a month.
Have fun, Carol. Enjoy.
Thanks. Well, one is to see family, but mainly there's 2 conferences coming up: the Tech Exchange and All Things Open. So
I hope you enjoy it all.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good luck with the conference work.
Thank you. I think some of you, I think is it James and Akansha are also going to the Tech Exchange. So yeah, cool. And JJ, we'll be seeing you there. Yep.
Awesome.
Hey, we're on stage talking together. We actually need to talk about that.
Yes, right. All things open. We need to work on that.
Yes, we do.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Then that concludes our meeting for this week. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good rest of your days.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jim, for hosting.
Thanks, Judy. Thank everybody.
Yep. Bye.